Hello. One of my students has requested that I do a short video on how to practice Neti. Neti is the nasal saline wash used in Ayurveda for thousands of years. In this practice, we pour salt water through the nasal passages to wash out any old mucus, cleanse out any bacteria, pollen, dust, anything that's accumulated on the mucus, which is sticky and traps dirt and viruses. And so in Ayurveda they recommend that you wash this out. I do this twice a day, when I get up in the morning and then before I go to bed at night, and I've been doing that for almost 30 years. In addition, if I am feeling congested or if I'm worried that I might be coming down with something or exposed to something, I might do it more often as needed. The first decision to make is what type of a neti pot you would like to buy if you don't already have your own. Okay. This is an example of a typical plastic neti pot. The nice thing about this is it's very, very light and it's not easy to break. Okay. I use this when I'm on the road, when I'm traveling. For home practice, I like and prefer a ceramic neti pot. This one has a lip around the top that you can hold and it fits in the palm of your hand fairly snugly. Others have a little handle at the very back. Some are metal, some are porcelain. This is the one that I've been using for about 15 years and I've grown very comfortable with it. I like the lip because it allows you to hold onto it and much less likely that you'll drop it and break it. So the three important elements to practicing neti safely and comfortably. So the first is the temperature of the water. The water should be fairly warm but not hot. I like it warmer than lukewarm. I find that when the salt water is lukewarm or cooler, it causes kind of a little nausea, a little gag reflexes in some of my students. When it's warmer, that doesn't happen. But if it's too hot, it'll cause some irritation in the mucal membrane. So it wants to be a comfortable temperature. The next most important thing is the salinity. If your water is too salty, or if it's not salty enough, it will burn or it'll feel unpleasant. So for a neti pot of this size, which is a standard typical neti pot, about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, maybe a little bit more than that. And I put that into the neti pot to start with. Then I take a tall glass of water, preferably something that's been filtered or bottled water, purified water, or distilled water. I'll heat that, and I usually more than the neti pot would fill. So for a neti pot like this, I'd want a fairly tall glass with maybe twice as much water in it as the neti pot can hold. I'll microwave that for a minute or two till it gets up to a nice comfortable temperature. I pour in a little bit in, maybe half. I stir it to get the salt to dissolve, and then I pour it up until it's full, and then I taste the water. And we're looking for 0.09% normal saline. The way you'll know that is it's the same salinity as your bodily fluids. So if you just think about the taste of a teardrop, that's what you're looking for. And it'll be too salty if you used a little bit of a heaping 1/4 teaspoon. It'll probably be too much salt. So when you taste it, it'll be a little too salty. So you keep pouring water, tasting, pouring water, tasting, until the water tastes right. If you want to go beyond the basic recipe, some people find that the normal saline irritates the nasal passages a little bit. So you'll find recipes online, for instance adding a little baking soda as a buffer. And then you can also find recipes for adding essential oils for one various reason or another. If you choose to do that, be very careful. Make sure you follow the directions precisely and that you have the right starting ingredients as you follow those directions. If you get too strong of a solution with an essential oil and you pour that through the nasal passages, it can actually damage the tissues. At the very least, be very unpleasant. So follow those instructions carefully. For myself, I just use straight salt water, and I haven't had any problems with it, so I don't bother with mixing in baking soda or anything else. Just a pinch of sea salt, a little warm water, and I'm ready to go. The hardest thing to figure out from written directions is the correct alignment for your head while practicing Neti. So for this, join me in the bathroom sink and I'll demonstrate. If you lower your head down and turn it over like this, the water is going to go in through the top nostril, and then it's going to come into your throat and start going down your windpipe. And this is going to cause a gag reflex. This is actually a form of torture, waterboarding. So the positioning of your head is critical. So the way I think about doing it is, I imagine I'm going to wash my hair in the sink. And the first thing I do is I take the top of my head down. Then I just turn my head slightly like I'm trying to talk to someone while I'm washing my hair. And now I'm in the correct position. So the water will flow up over the septum and drain out of the opposite nostril. Let me demonstrate. So I'm starting to pour the water now, and here it comes. Now it's not getting anywhere close to my windpipes, which is why I can talk to you as I'm practicing this. Then I blow my nose. Then I repeat on the opposite side. When you're finished, have a paper towel handy or a Kleenex, and then blow your nose. And then immediately afterwards, you should notice that you can breathe much more freely and your nasal passages are open and you've washed out all of the mucus that has collected there. And this also helps to wash out any dander, allergens, pathogens, bacteria, any viruses that might be stuck into that mucus. We flush it all out. And if you do that on a regular basis, it helps to keep the nasal passages healthy. Sometimes people will turn to Neti. It's usually used as a preventative. However, if you are already congested and the water doesn't want to go through, so you tilt your head, you pour the water through, and it just kind of goes up and stops and doesn't come out the opposite side. Just give it about 10 minutes. Come back, and in that 10 minutes, do it on both sides, and then in that 10 minutes that you let it rest, this saline solution, as far as it managed to penetrate, will begin to shrink the mucosal membrane, and the membrane will open up a little bit, so when you come back and try it, the water will go even further. It may come all the way through. If it doesn't, it'll still get further than it did. Give it another 10 minutes, come back, and by the third time it should be flowing freely. Without any restriction, because the salt water has done its job of opening up the mucosal membranes. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy this practice.